A few years ago, I did a video about, it's called Google Goggles. I went out into the garden, put my camera next to some flowers, some geraniums if I remember correctly, and took a photograph of the flower, and then Google took the photograph, somehow sent it out onto the internet or into the webs or whatever it was, and then compared it with some database somewhere, and then gave you suggestions as to what the plant might be, and it correctly identified the geranium as a geranium. And I thought, quite marvellous, you can use that for identifying plants. Well, Google Goggles disappeared, but on my new phone I have discovered that there's now something called Google Lens, and I have run some tests on it. That's bad sunlight coming through that window. Run some tests on it. Is that better? And it looks like it's just as good as Google Goggles, and I'll show you what it's able to do. So, I'm using this screen recorder to record the things that I've already sort of taken photographs of, so it will give you some idea. So if we go to our gallery, and let's start here. So the first one was a photograph of some garlic, which is in the upper section, some garlic that I've just collected from the garden and cleaned. So I took a photograph of it, and then underneath there you can see that Google is now suggesting that that this plant is garlic, which is correct. This was an interesting one. I took the upper photograph there is of our linden tree, and it's got those small sort of berries there, and you can see here that Google is again saying that this is Tilia cordata, or linden flower, so it recognized it. So that's 2 out of 2. Top one here was some lilies in the garden, and it is correctly identified as tiger lily. Next one, clover in the garden, and you can see here it's white clover, Trifolium subterraneus, I think it's called. So 3 out of 3. This was something that's growing in our backyard, and I never ever knew what it was, but apparently Google has identified it as Artemisia lactiflora. So I'll have to check and find out whether or not that is correct, but it looks something similar. Mugwort, I wonder what it is. Sounds like something that you would find at Harry Potter would use at Hogwarts, mugwort. There we have the upper photograph with some bluebells in our garden, Campanella, and it's suggesting it's the common bluebell. It might not be, it might be another. There's lots of those campanellas. So this, what could that be? It could be a bottle top, it could be, I don't know what it is, but apparently Google has identified it as a mushroom, Rusula. So doesn't say whether it's Isohapara is what it's called in Finnish. Google Lens again. These are some of the onions that I pulled out the ground, and it's correctly identifying it as a white onion. Red currants, it recognizes red currants, it tells you what it is. Upper photograph is the red currant, and the bottom ones is the suggestions that Google give you. white currant, it gets the white currant. This is a bee's balm. In other words, this purple bergamot. The leaves you can take from it and put it into a tea. I think the Indians in North America, they called it Oswego tea. So, correctly identified wild bergamot. Broad bean from our garden. This is the Sutton dwarf that I'm growing. And there down the bottom you see it recognises it as a broad bean. So it's almost 100% right in everything that it has done. This one was a bit difficult because it was the scapes that are coming into flower, and it doesn't know if it's coming from an onion or from a garlic. So a little bit of confusion there. But in the ballpark, this was some rocket which had gone to seed. And you can see here it's getting it correct with the Sinapicalia or arugula rocket. That's mustard. Mustard. Sinapi is mustard, kale, cabbage, which is the Finnish name for it. And that there is some coriander, and you can see it's identified as coriandrum, but it's also saying bitter cress, so it's not sure. But I know that it's coriander. Tansy, golden marquette or marquette. So again, correct. Oregano up in the top, oregano or marjoram down in the bottom. So you can see that it's pretty accurate in finding these plants. So if you're ever out at some garden centre and you're wanting to know, or just wandering in a park and you find a plant, then you can use this Google Lens to find out exactly what the plant is, and then go to your garden centre and buy it. So that's it, Google Lens, and it can be used for other things as well. For going into shops, for looking at books, getting more information in books. I'll show you how that works as well. And here we have just a book of poems by Charles Bukowski. The days run away like wild horses over the hills. And then it shows you the book is by Charles Bukowski, and where you can buy it if you want it. This is a Boya microphone, which I use, and I took a photograph of it, and then underneath it you can see Boya BYM1, and where you can go and buy it on the web. So quite interesting. And then I took a photograph of this tap, and then underneath it there's similar types of taps, and where you can buy them, Walmart or AliExpress. So it's not only for the identification of flowers, that you can use it for lots of different objects to identify them, and also find out where you can get them on the web. So that's a real sort of useful service from Google Lens. So here we are on my home page, and there's the Play Store there. If we click on the Play Store, then we're in Google Play, and then if we search for, oh, there it's there, Lens. I've already done this. And Google Lens, it has 100 million downloads. So, and search with your camera, translate any text that you see. So if you're in some foreign country and you want to know You just hold up your camera and it will translate for you. Identify animals. Take action on a text. Don't know, I suppose that's getting tickets for something. Explore similar looking items. If you want to buy a stool, but one's expensive and one isn't, you can find out where to buy it. See what's popular in menus. So if you find some strange looking animal, you can identify it. So that's it. It's got lots of uses and a really handy thing to have in your phone.